listening to Season 7 of the podcast, Belonging to Blackness. I'm your host, Dr. India. Welcome to Season 7 of the podcast, Belonging to Blackness, the space where Black brilliance, beauty, and boldness belong unapologetically. I'm your host, Dr. India. I am excited. Not only is this episode kicking off the season, but today I have the distinct honor of welcoming one of the most incisive thinkers of our time, Dr. Eddie Glaude Jr. A native of Moss Point, Mississippi, Eddie is a scholar, author, educator, and political commentator whose voice resonates across classrooms, boardrooms, and television screens alike. He is the James S. McDonald Distinguished University Professor of African American Studies at Princeton University, a trustee at Morehouse College, and a regular presence on programs on MSNBC. Through books like Democracy in Black: How Race Still Enslaves the American Soul, In a Shade of Blue, the New York Times bestseller Begin Again, James Baldwin's America and Its Urgent Lessons for Our Own, and of course, his powerful new work, We Are the Leaders We've Been Looking For. Eddie challenges us to reckon with the moral crises of democracy, the soul of Black America, and our own responsibilities in this era of transformation. Today, we will explore his personal journey, his evolving scholarship, and the urgent politics of belonging, both locally and globally. Welcome, Eddie.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you, Doc. I'm so looking forward to our conversation.
Oh, and I'm sure our listeners are eager to get into it. So are you ready?
Yes, indeed. Absolutely.
Give Black Alliance is proud to support the podcast Talking Journeys of Belonging to Blackness, hosted by India Lorick Wilmot. The podcast is an exploration of all aspects of our Black communities, including gifts of time, talent, and treasure, while shedding a positive light on the African descendant experience globally. The Give Black Alliance informs, reforms, and transforms philanthropy to acknowledge and partner with our communities in order to bring about equitable change for all. To learn more about Give Black Alliance, visit us at giveblackalliance.org.
Act 1, Call to Adventure. So, Eddie, I've always remarked that much of what inspires us gives us purpose autobiographically. You grew up in Moss Point, Mississippi, alongside your brother and your sister during the afterlife of the passage of the civil rights legislation. Mm-hmm. Your dad served in the Navy before working for the U.S. Postal Service, and then your mother worked at a shipyard supervising facilities. Mm-hmm. You then left home at 16 to attend Morehouse, and then went off to earn a master's in African American Studies from Temple, and then your PhD in religion from Princeton. So with all of that, how did that early experience of place, faith, and Black community shape your intellectual journey and moral compass?
Wow, such an important question. I'm a country boy. I was born on the coast, so the water, the smell of the Gulf of Mexico is so important. In so many ways, determine the seasons by the odd mixture of the smell of the water and the porgy plant or the paper mill. I think sensorily, home was so important to grounding me, from the magnolia trees to horseflies. You know, Mississippi, its weather is like the state. It's at once beautiful and antagonistic and dangerous. So there's that. And then I grew up Catholic, and I grew up in a Josephite parish. I remember going to communion and always seeing St. Martin de Porres right to the left of the priest. I remember it was Second Vatican as I was coming up, so we had a gospel choir. And I remember our gospel choir traveling across our little town to the local Pentecostal church to participate in the gospel fest, and me experiencing for the first time, you know, a kind of Black Protestant worship service and being shook by the outward expressiveness, but taken overrun and overwhelmed by the beauty of the ritual, the sounds that captured my attention. And then, of course, there's the food and the music, the love of my parents, but, also the strictness of my dad. He is the most important presence in my life for a number of reasons in this early stage. And not all of them are good. So when I think of home, not only do I think of the beauty of the place and the power of its cultural and communal setting, it's also a site of wound.
Mm.
I can remember as early as remembering being afraid of him, but understanding that my discipline comes from him. My resolve comes from him. My courage is a result of his insistence. The journey was started right there.
Right.
In this beautiful place where I could walk to the Gulf of Mexico dock, but also where I was trying to figure out how could I survive the glare and the rage of my own dad.
Mm. Place is just another type of space that we traverse. We grapple with a lot of the things that we contend with, even still later into adulthood. I also grew up Catholic, and so I totally understand what that means. Even if, let's say, the congregants mostly look like me, there's a little soul and flavor, but it's very much different from going to a Pentecostal or a Baptist place of worship. Faith-based institutions as places where there was safety, there was community that you're framing out. At the same time that there was perhaps some tension between yourself and your dad and that father-son type of dynamic.
Yeah, the rituals of the Catholic Church, the liturgy is so beautiful. You could be a lapsed Catholic like I am, but put me at a mass and immediately I could do the profession of faith. There's something about that relationality that really shaped how I orient myself to the world. But, oftentimes we tell ourselves stories of our beginnings in ways that sometimes obscure the harm. I think the texture of our lives are a result of those bumpy roads, of those hard moments, the moments when love wasn't embracing, but rough, had rough edges and left their wounds. I look like my father. I'm the spitting image of him. I have his personality in so many ways. It took me a long time to accept that. I didn't used to use the junior.
Interesting.
I only started using it after I realized that you can't run away from it,
Right.
I am his child. I want to own that and all of the complexity that comes with that ownership.
As we mature through the life cycle, perhaps there's this understanding around the significance of grace. Particularly when we're young, we oftentimes have a very specific experience we tend to reject or flee from. But then it's not until through life and experiences that we then settle in to really sort of think about, I understand why certain people were this way, why certain experiences played out in these particular ways, giving grace and understanding. So perhaps that's what you may have experienced with now embracing the junior in so many other ways.
That's brilliant. And it seems to me that grace releases us into the possibility of being otherwise. I'm going on 57 now. If I spent much of my life trying to grapple with the pain and the hurt, I could have never, stepped into a different way of being in the world. I would have been shackled to 2750 Briarwood. As Emerson says, if we're going to reach for higher selves, older selves have to die. Let's let them die with grace.
And with that is forgiveness, because it's doing some of the same things, right? And the forgiveness is not really about the other person, it's for you.
Come on.
So we're flirting with the idea of these past experiences informing our future selves, right? How have these experiences stayed with you and influenced even your current perspectives in your work? And I'm thinking about the evolution of your work from an earlier piece like In a Shade of Blue to currently We Are the Leaders We've Been Looking For.
Yeah, that's a great question. When I got to Princeton, I studied with Cornel West. And Cornel West, he is who he is, but he was a part of this resurgence of American pragmatism. He wrote The American Evasion of Philosophy, but he was also a student, as a graduate student, of Richard Rorty. And so I had never really encountered pragmatism in any systematic way. And between him and my other teacher, Jeffrey Stout, who was also a former student of Richard Rorty, pragmatism suddenly came to me.
Mm.
And it became a way of seeing and thinking. But what I wanted to do was to bring it across the railroad tracks. I wasn't interested in the kind of professional philosophical questions of epistemology and ontology and this sort of thing. I wanted to think pragmatically about how Black folk navigated this world, how they would bring their skill set to bear on the problems of identity, on the problems of history, on the issue of agency, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so In a Shade of Blue was my attempt to make explicit those pragmatic tools. Because in my first book, Exodus, pragmatism is everywhere in the way in which I was reading the archive, the way in which I read David Walker's Appeal or Henry Harlan Garnett's Address to the Slaves, right? I'm reading them with the eye of someone who has these philosophical commitments which opened up the text in very different ways. Now, I think what happened between those early books and We Are the Leaders, going back to something we said earlier about maturation, you move from a position of imitation and mimicry, of trying to participate in an academic discourse to show your competency, your proficiency, even your brilliance, to possessing it in a way such that you can actually think without having to invoke this or that, or you can actually use the concepts in a way to pursue the ends and aims that animate your intellectual curiosity or the project in front of you. You know, from Exodus to In a Shade to We Are the Leaders, pragmatism is the through line. But I think what's clear is that what preoccupies me, what sits in my gut, comes more to the fore by the time I get to We Are the Leaders. And so instead of kind of thinking pragmatically about problems, I want to think in We Are the Leaders, how might I release myself into a fuller way of being who I am in the service or in the pursuit of justice? As opposed to just simply acting on behalf of justice, what does it mean to think about my own individuality, right, as a critical feature of the work of building a more just world, as opposed to losing myself in that work? It's really, I think, an indication of the arc of my own preoccupations and then my own comfort with the source material, with the philosophical scaffolding of how I think about the world, it seems to me. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And then when I think about reading In a Shade of Blue, you're being very critical in the face of disillusionment, right? But then I would say overall, your positionality, I think, speaks to where you were at also professionally at the time, right? You're looking to Black thinkers and how they're engaging both the academy and the community. And I think that's always a thing that we as educators in the ivory tower are always questioned about. We're always charged with, well, you're pontificating over here, but speaking real talk to us. And what does this really mean? For me, my take on We Are the Leaders and where you might be professionally and even in your own thinking, it's around a collective power, but not looking to only those that we've anointed as the brilliant, talented 10th to solve the problems.
That's absolutely spot on so many levels. When I was writing In a Shade of Blue, many people don't know this, but I'm actually on tour with Tavis Smiley with the Covenant with Black America.
I don't think I remember that.
I'm actually in town hall meetings with Tavis and Cornell and others, having these conversations about what do Black people need to do in order to respond to the material conditions of their living. And I'm sitting there thinking about what I'm experiencing on the ground as we were talking to Black folk. I'm in Shiloh Baptist Church in Baltimore. You know, I'm all over the country in interesting sorts of ways, from Texas to California to New York. And so I was trying to think about, okay, now what does this mean for the work that I'm doing in the ivory tower? Not thinking about these things in a sophisticated way. And I remember the end of In a Shade of Blue where I'm railing against the 60s as this overdetermining moment that in so many ways suffocates the imagination of Gen Xers and the subsequent generations, right? It's a really scorched earth analysis, as you rightly note. I'm coming out swinging like the young boy that I was, right?
Yes.
How that same sentiment gets rendered in We Are the Leaders is very different.
Right.
Because, I'm an older guy trying to figure out still, though, how to find my own voice. Where does my love of King and Malcolm end? And where do I begin? Or does it ever end?
Mm.
How do I find my own distinctive sound? And is that a bad desire? And as I said to young folk as I travel around the country and to my son, sometimes you got to sing off key to be heard.
I love that.
These are the things that were working in my head as I was trying to render what was going on in my gut on the page, trying to find that balance. And hopefully I'm getting there as I keep writing.
In your New York Times bestseller, Begin Again, we can see this evolution of you as the writer and the scholar and the thinker, right? And so in that book, you're writing about one of your favorite writers, James Baldwin, but you're inviting us into what I would consider haunting, but also hopeful conversation about his legacy to become better ancestors by building a more honest and just and loving world, despite America's continual lie to itself about innocence and equality.
Yeah.
So, what did Baldwin teach you about vulnerability, about issues related to gender, because he grapples with that too, and the costs of telling the truth?
Oh my God, everything. When I was starting the book, I really couldn't get going. Didn't have access to the archive. That biography of Baldwin that we have, say, of Du Bois or Langston Hughes, that can't be written just yet because the papers have been embargoed for 30 years. So I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to attack this text, this subject. And Bishop Barber of the Poor People's Campaign knew that I was working on a book on Baldwin. So he sent me a saint's candle with Baldwin's picture on it. And I would light the candle every time I got to my computer. And on this day, for some reason, I heard his voice, and he said something to the effect, if we're going to do this together, oh boy, you're going to have to deal with you. So I had to go back and deal with my dad. I had to be vulnerable. I had to grapple with my fears. Baldwin says, you don't run away from your fears, you run towards them. And he said, I was afraid every day of my life, but he's one of the most courageous men I've ever encountered on the page. And so there's a sense about vulnerability that is all about what does it mean to seek the truth as you understand it? What does it mean to bear witness in the moment in which you're in? It means to take the risk, to expose yourself in a way, to not claim you have the answers, but to engage in the unsettling work of tapping the root, of getting beyond the surface, of risking drowning, right? Baldwin is surrounded by women. He loves his mom, right? And I've always been puzzled by the way in which he inhabits a certain kind of patriarchal space when he talks about gender. You can see that in the conversation or the exchange between him and Audre Lorde or him and Nick Giovanni. But there's something about the way in which we are socialized into manhood that he says is at the heart, it's at the root of the problem. And until we figure out how love releases us from the constraints of what it means to be masculine, to be a man, then women are always going to catch hell, right? He's already in this space that we have to deconstruct masculinity, that feminism requires a deconstruction of patriarchy, of masculinity in some ways. And so he taught me that. He taught me really about what love is all about.
In what ways?
There's that moment in No Name in the Street where he talks about, love, and I'm paraphrasing this here, when there's a naked body on top of your own. love is not just simply eros. It's not just simply agape. It's not just simply friendship, right? It's all of those things. And so what does it mean to be vulnerable in relation to another? What does it mean to open oneself up to another human being? That human being has the capacity, because they possess it, to destroy you. They know something about who you are. What does it mean to love another human being in such a way that you will give them access to that, right? And that love is not reducible to heterosexual relationships. It happens, it comes to you, right? And when it comes into your life, you either submit or you don't. Because if I trust you enough to love you, which means that I trust you enough to be vulnerable in the face of you, that's an exacting thing. What does it mean to predicate a politics on that? What does it mean to predicate an aesthetic on that? So for me, Baldwin was this extraordinary figure who opened up so much in me personally as a human being, but he also changed how I conceive of myself as a writer. So in A Shade of Blue, every chapter except for the last chapter begins with an epigraph from Baldwin. Only the chapter on Morrison, the last chapter, doesn't have an epigraph from Baldwin. It has an epigraph from Morrison.
Right.
And the only reason why it's Morrison, because I see Morrison as a student of Jimmy, as an inheritor of Jimmy. Democracy in Black, Baldwin is everywhere off stage. And so Begin Again is my attempt to usher him on stage. And my editor, Crown, they were like, why would you write about somebody? Why are you writing about a figure? People want to hear your voice. And I was like, no, let me write about him. I need to write about him in relation to me in this moment.
Right.
And everything changed. My whole life changed because of this frail, quirky, miserable, gay, queer Black man who dared to tell the truth, no matter when, no matter where, who he was in front of, no matter what were the stakes. What am I?
Absolutely. And that's why, in many ways, just even for him as a writer, he came in and out of favor, even amongst the Black literati. Sometimes people are like, wait, hold on, Jimmy.
Don't say that, please.
Don't say that. Your straight end of truth telling is pulling at something that we're not quite ready to contend with. But I think it's interesting, even for you as a writer and as a thinker, this self-awareness around the evolution of your thinking. Begin Again needed to happen so that by the time you're writing We Are the Leaders, you can have some distance to then see the love that you also had for Malcolm, too.
Yeah.
And James Baldwin's work teaches us not only about how to be as just humans, but how we should be in terms of how are we interacting with the world around us that doesn't love us.
Absolutely. That's such a powerful point. Baldwin taught me how to balance my rage and love. Because Malcolm gave me language for my father's rage.
Yes.
I come out of Moss Point, Mississippi, this small Catholic town. Nobody went to college. There were no books in my house. I'm working class folk. So I get to Morehouse my freshman year. They hand me the autobiography. And I go, oh, this is it. This is why my dad couldn't suffer these white folk. Now, I knew of the history, but something visceral hit me, right? And so I grew my goatee. And I still have it to this day. And I will never shave it off. Even when I joined the nation for 3 months, I wouldn't shave it off. Because I was trying to live romantically the period of time that I thought I should have been in. Because I've always felt like I was born out of place and out of time. Oh, I really wish I was born in the 60s. I would have stood post with Malcolm. I would have been serving breakfast with the Black Panther Party. Because I identify with Black Power more than I did with the Civil Rights Movement at the time. Because in some ways, we're the children of Malcolm, not of Martin.
Right.
But we don't tell the story of the freedom movement in that way, right? But Baldwin taught me that rage, because he was a rageful man, and it could explode at any time, right? But rage without love is monstrous.
Absolutely.
He taught me how to love and to be angry. What I did with We Are the Leaders, I find what it means to be a man in Malcolm, because my father questioned my manhood early on. But I end up in the lap of Ella Baker, one of the most brilliant strategists, brilliant political minds America's ever produced. Right? And so that's only possible in some ways because I'm making this journey intellectually and personally. behind the scenes. If our work is going to be meaningful beyond the kind of professional practice of being in this ivory tower, it has to really, really be attached to the gut.
Mm.
What's going on the inside in relation to the world as it is and as the world could be.
Belonging to Blackness, proudly sponsored by Get Connected. Get Connected is a nationally recognized premier cross-cultural and inclusive business networking organization for professionals, business, and civic leaders, entrepreneurs from all cultures across industries and sectors. Our mission is to curate meaningful cross-cultural business and social connections while amplifying, celebrating, documenting, and showcasing the contributions of people of color and allies across our communities. To learn more, visit us at www.getconnected.com.
Act 2, The Road. So I love this question that I always ask my guests. And the question is, how do you play?
Escape the world, retreat to my basement, turn on some jazz, and just read a novel. Those moments when I can fall back or fall into my imagination. And the reason why I say that, Doc, is because when I was little, my neighbor, Sean, used to have these Tinker toys, and we would put them together and act like it was a race car, and we would pretend that we were racing, or we'd get under the bed and read. There was always these moments where the imagination became not only a respite, but a pathway out of whatever was going on around me. So I don't know if that's play or is that survival. I don't know.
Play is necessary for our survival. We almost need a moment to pause and to breathe and to rest. We need some space. And I ask my guests this question because it stumps every single person to really think about the ways that give us strength to push forward for the next day.
I was just home not too long ago. My mother had cancer surgery. The kids, we all came home, had our time, right? Because we had to help our dad. My oldest sister, there are four of us. My mother had rubella, German measles, when she was young. And so my oldest sister is severely handicapped. She can't walk, can't talk, can't see, can't hear. So part of my childhood is that we rotated. We all fed her before we went to school, before we went to bed. We did all these things. And, she wasn't supposed to live past 10 years old, and she's now 62. My mother's been changing diapers for 62 years. So she's sick, recovering from cancer surgery. My dad can't do it by himself. So it's my turn. I'm there for 2 weeks. And I'm cooking, trying to fatten her up for the radiation phase of the treatment. And I'm running around. And my dad said to me, "You're running around here like you're 20 years old. Slow down. Rest." And my mother, "You're like a rabbit. Calm down." I would wake up in the early hours before anyone would wake up, and I would work on my book.
Right.
And then when they got up, I would cook breakfast, and then I would go to the grocery store and cook dinner. And so to hear you say what you're saying, and then to hear it as an echo. And my dad, this man that we just talked about, as I'm leaving to return to New Jersey, he's up at 4:30 in the morning, and he says to me, "Just promise me that you're going to figure out how to live this life at a slower pace. You don't need to do it like you used to. You're good." I got to think about it a little bit more.
Well, and also for you to consider too, since you're also a bibliophile, what your desert island book would be.
Oh my God. I thought about this and I was like, that's such a cruel question. I think it would have to be a novel, right? And more than likely, probably the Morrison novel or Gabriel Garcia Marquez novel. Oh my God, what would it mean to read 100 Years of Solitude on a Deserted Island, right? I would want to be able to read it in the Spanish, in the original language.
Right.
I would have to bring fiction with me. If I'm on a deserted island, I got to be able to weave worlds.
Because it helps with the imagination of what you want your reality to be.
Exactly. Absolutely. And then, of course, there's always the power of language, the tool of imagination. What does it mean to have words that will allow you to weave the stories,
That's right.
to create walking partners
Hmm.
when you're just chilling?
That's right. I guess a question that I have for you, you talk a lot about self-creation as well as self-cultivation.
Mm,
And you started even our conversation today with sometimes you need to leave stuff behind in order to propel forward. But in that pursuit of efficiency around getting to race and justice and democracy, what happens when we can't do that? Because we're kind of too busy telling lies to ourselves. And it
right.
complicates even our self cultivation, if that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. If you're going to literally, really leave a self behind, you got to tell the truth about what that self is. You can't say to the person you love after you're having all of these problems, we're going to be better, but you don't want to deal with the lie and the wound and the hurt that's at the heart of why we're not better. You got to tell yourself the truth in order to release yourself into possibility, it seems to me. I use this example of James W.C. Pennington. And
Mhm.
Pennington was Douglass before Douglass. You know, he wrote The Fugitive Blacksmith, and first Black person to get a PhD from Heidelberg University, and brilliant dude. But he has this moment in The Fugitive Blacksmith where he talks about the horror of slavery. And he says the one thing that he would never forgive slavery is that it robbed him of his education. He can try to rid the sound of slavery from his tongue, but there's certain things that he just can't recoup. And what does he mean by that? All of the work that he's doing in cultivating himself, the world as it has been organized gets in the way. If the world holds a host of assumptions about who you are, then it gets in the way of you becoming the kind of person you imagine yourself to be. So self-cultivation has to be in the service of building a more just world. That requires telling ourselves the truth. I had this conversation with my son who's about to get married. And I was like, look, don't wait like I did. And he's like, what do you mean? I waited too long to have a conversation with your granddad. And by the time I had the conversations with him, you were already a teenager and I had already done the damage.
Mm.
If you're going to release yourself from whatever mess and craziness that your dad did to you, talk to me now before your babies come. So it seems to me that the precondition for self-cultivation is a truthfulness about what has been poured in us that malforms, that disrupts, that gums us up. Now, I don't say that to say that we have to throw it all away, because we can't do that either.
Right.
Who I am is bound up with Eddie Glaude Sr. It
Right.
gives me texture. It's the source of my swing, right?
Yeah.
A
No.
Duke Ellington style in some ways. So part of what we have to do is to understand our relation to tradition, our relation to the past. How does it become funded experience that informs and shapes how we move, as opposed to shackles on our feet? A different way of putting it, India, is how do we stand in right relation to our past?
Mm. But that requires us to even contend with how we engage with each other, not only in the past, but in the
In the
present and
present.
in the future, right? Because when I think about Black diaspora here in the United States,
Mm,
where it's a nation that has oftentimes historically betrayed its promise to us and, in effect, has pit us against each other,
mhm.
right? And so when people were voting for whoever they were voting for, the last election about immigration and the wall, I recall folks that look like us in the streets talking about those other people. Fast forward, they're not only collecting those other people, but they're collecting us.
Mhm.
And maybe we speak a French Creole, maybe we're speaking different languages, but they're very much us. How is it that we're going to be able to really truly lean into a lot of the things that Baldwin talks about, the rage and the love, when we have rage and not so much love all the time with one another?
Right.
Especially in this political moment, also contend with global blackness on that level. You know what I
I
mean?
think that's such an important point. And I think it's a point that forces us to admit That black people are as complicated as any other people. Simply because we catch hell doesn't mean that we don't contain folk who hold noxious views, that folk aren't greedy and selfish, that people aren't nativist and mean-spirited. Black folk are as complicated as any other group of people. We just can't posit a sense of solidarity among Black folk just because they're Black. There are going to be folks who are the ADOS folk who are going to hold a certain position. And they're going to view my son as somehow less Black because his mother's Jamaican. They're going to think I'm a sellout. I even had someone ask, Glaude, that's a strange name. Is he really from the United States? And people are like, it's from Mississippi. It was French. What are you talking about, right?
Right.
The reality is that we have to do the hard work of solidarity making. Solidarities come into existence and out of existence all the time. We just can't presuppose them. And what we have to do in those moments is give voice to a conception of what it means to be decent and loving and just, that cut across all of these things that get in the way of us seeing each other for who we are. Baldwin says that the messiness of the world is in part a reflection of the messiness of our interior lives. So
Right.
that we have to become better people if we really want to make a better world. And so you got these folk who are running around here thinking that just because you're from Jamaica, or just because you're from Trinidad, or just because you're from the French-speaking Caribbean, that somehow you're taking something from me. Where at the root of that is a kind of selfishness that cuts against the grain of the tradition that made you possible in the first place.
That's right.
And so it seems to me in that moment, what we do is not appeal to some easy Blackness that says that you and I are supposed to be in solidarity with each other because we're Black. That's too easy.
Right.
In so many ways, it renders us apolitical. Politics is supposed to swoop down on us just because we're Black. No, 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 no. You got Black folk who are conservative, Black folk who are centrist, Black folk who are this and that and the other, because we're complex.
Right.
So what we got to do is look at the human being right in front of us and do the hard work and say to that person, you must have lost your damn mind if you think that the only thing that matters within the boundaries of the U.S. nation state. You must not have a sophisticated understanding of the Black freedom tradition in the United States if you limit it only to the geographical region of the United States. You can't understand the Harlem Renaissance. You can't understand abolitionism. You can't. I can go down the line. The largest movement in the history of the United States was the Garvey movement.
Mm-hmm.
Come on now. So part of what I'm saying is, first, let's dispel ourselves of the crutch that because we're Black, we're supposed to be in solidarity with each other. And once we rid ourselves of that crutch, then we can do the hard work of building solidarity that has lasting, powerful impacts as we try to change the world in relation to Black people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry I got passionate about that.
It's a topic that we should be passionate about because we are in a current state where it's just like, if you don't have that passion and trying to figure out where you're going to channel it, we in trouble, you know?
So the question is, will we survive?
Well, you know what? When I think about folks, and you cited to her a lot, and We Are Leaders, Ella Baker, a lot of your analysis in the book was really around the fact, hey, we cannot have these appointed leaders, not just appointed from within our communities, but tapped on the shoulder and anointed as our spokespeople. I'm tired. I know a lot of Black women in the community and others, colleagues of ours too, that are just fatigued.
Yeah.
We actually need to look within amongst each other, the elders, the youth, the artists, the activists, the political leaders, and the scholars to really help pull together all of this.
Absolutely.
And this book has really been a charge to say, hey, it's nice to have this charismatic being, right? Martin, Malcolm, others. But after that, well, what do we do? Because if anything, if we don't feel like this person's been tapped, then you'll have young people saying, well, who's supposed to lead us? And Ella Baker and others are like, we could lead ourselves.
Great people come to us so that even greater people can follow. They don't come to us for supplication. You and me to fall on our knees, for us to imitate. Emerson was right. Imitation is a form of suicide. I know my speaking style is rooted in this Black nationalist tradition, out of which I come and I cut my teeth. I know why I have my goatee, you know. To show a fidelity to the past doesn't mean you show a slavishness to it.
Right.
These are resources for us to find what's in us. And as Ms. Baker said, a strong people don't need strong leaders. If we can begin to have a radical democratic vision where we, the people, actually take form and shape in the affirmation of the capacity of everyday ordinary people to be the leaders that they need, in a moment where it seems as if the demos in this country refuses to take responsibility for self-governance. What does it mean to assert that if we're going to change the direction of the country, if we're going to save it, it ain't going to be Reverend Sharp.
Right.
It's not going to be another politician. It's not going to be second coming of Barack Obama. It's got to be us. And if we abdicate that responsibility, we seal our fate.
Act 3, Where We Land. All right, Dr. Eddie Glaude, we have reached the point of our show where we're at the end. You know, it's the fall. People are back on campuses. You know, they've lifted off the lax of summer. Are there any particular upcoming events or talks, book tours that you're doing that people can check out? Or if there's a website for folks to visit so that they can follow you and buy your book and hear you speak on it, please do share.
It's one of the beautiful times of year, fall. You know, you see the colors, right? The shift, the change. Princeton's campus is gorgeous. I would urge folk to follow me on my Substack, A Native Son. We're continuing to drive content there. A couple of projects coming out over the next few months. Edited volumes on James W.C. Pennington, his writings, as well as an edited volume of essays on his writings. The paperback edition of We Are the Leaders is on its way. It's coming out in February. My next book, it's the follow-up to Begin Again. It's called America, USA, How Race Shadows a Nation's Anniversary. Coming out in June, I take a look at 1876, 1926, 1976, all in the run-up to the 250th anniversary of the nation, only to say that it's not us. We're not just the only ones who suffer double consciousness, the nation does. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean for how we think about moving forward as a country?
When the book comes out in the next couple of months, perhaps you'd be available so you can come back.
I would love to. That would be a joy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eddie Glaude, for joining us here on Belonging to Blackness.
I appreciate you and keep doing what you're doing.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others and be sure to subscribe. Find us on my website, www.indialoricwilmot.com. Follow us on IG and Facebook at belongingtoblackness_podcast for the latest fashion and accessories. Visit www.shopbelongingtoblackness.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.